Hello everyone and welcome to Aiden The Sports Guy YouTube channel. I am Aiden and thank you for joining me today. This is a new YouTube channel where I will be talking about everything in sports, all the headlines that are kind of grabbing my attention and anything that's taking my interest. And this is our first video on this channel. So if you could please drop a like and a subscribe, that would be amazing. Now, thought we'd start with a bit of a doozy. So as this is the first video and football is one of my main interests, we are doing today a Premier League Challengers tier list. So on the screen, I have a tier list here for you, and I picked out 6 teams that I basically think are in the title challenge, or that most people would probably think. Now, honourable mention to the likes of Crystal Palace here. They are not included in this. I do think they'll just fall away. For this video, particularly for this tier list, we're focusing on these 6 teams. So we've got Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, United, Aston Villa and Manchester City. And we've got 3 tiers that we're going to work with. So we've got no chance. So people who basically, I believe, have absolutely no chance in this world, even though they might be doing all right so far, or their status as a club might make you think that they're going to be good or they're going to do well for the rest of the season. We've got fun but flawed, the second tier list. Teams that I think are very good, but their flaws will end up meaning that they will fall away by the time that we get to the business end of the season. And then finally, the proper challengers. So these are the teams that I believe are probably going to be there by the end of the season in a proper title race. Now, I think it's important to note that this season has been a really fun season so far. We've had a lot of teams taking points off each other, and it's a very even table at the moment. There's not much between different positions. A couple wins and a couple losses either way cause like drastic changes in the table at the moment. So definitely is a Premier League that's worth watching this year. Then there's definitely going to be a lot of storylines as we go along, which we'll cover here on the channel. So starting with the tier list. So with our first tier, how we're going to do this is basically I'm going to pop the teams in the tiers that I believe are going to be there, and then I'll talk about them one by one. So to start with, no chance. Okay, as I love to say it, Man United have no chance of winning the league, and Liverpool. All right, so Man United, interesting team, because the start of the season would lead you to believe that they are a team that still on the downward trajectory. And if you talk to any of the United fans, any of the ones that I know in my life, they are a bit miserable at the moment, to say the least. Now, I'm not sure why, really. They are relatively high in the table. They have 25 points this season, which is a lot more than they had at this point last season. They have been on some decent winning runs, a couple draws here and there. They have lost 4 times, and their goal difference is only +4, which is obviously concerning if you are a United fan. But for me, and it pains me to say it, they do look a lot better than what they were in the previous seasons. Now, when I speak to United fans in my life or people that I know, they're very miserable. And they obviously watch their team day in and day out. But from the things I've seen, positives, they can create a lot of chances. They might not score them because they don't really have anyone who's, firing at a rate that is on a par with the other strikers and the other attacking players in the league, which is why they're not really they're on a +4 goal difference at the end of the day. And their XG per match is only 1.82, which is not great at all. And XG doesn't tell you everything, but it's not great. But they do look more creative. Bruno Fernandes is still racking up great numbers, even though, again, they're not maybe converting as many chances should do. He has 6 assists so far this season, which is incredible for a team like United, to be fair, to have a player who's got 6 assists, but it's just a testament to how good he is, to be fair. But negative-wise, why I think they will probably fall away by the wayside is they concede way too many big chances. Now, combining that with the fact that they're not converting as many is a real problem, and it's something that they really should have addressed in the summer, which they didn't. Now, they have a couple of great defenders in the sense, or young potential defenders, I wouldn't really say great, but have a good potential with the likes of a Yoro or a Delict. But in my opinion, they've not really done anything that is that of note. They average at best on most occasions. Every now and then they'll have a run of games which are really good. But in all seriousness, they've not got enough when it comes to keeping teams out to be in a race this season, in my opinion, and I think most people will agree. Now, moving on, Liverpool. Okay, Interesting one this season, eh? I think everyone at the start of the season probably would have tipped them after the transfer window they had to be at probably the challengers tier of this tier list. I don't think anybody really would have doubted that. Most people were picking between Arsenal or Liverpool to win the league. But, I mean, this just shows you what confidence can do, and when the sort of circumstances when a lot of your players reach an age where their performance will just decline rapidly. The likes of Robertson, Van Dijk, Mo Salah, big players over the years. Alisson even hasn't looked amazing. Injuries have caught up with him. And they are players over the years that have been, obviously, Premier League standard bearers, ones that have been basically top of their sort of position in ability, and most people would agree the best at what they do. But when all of those players, and City had this last year, when all of those players reach that age and all of them suddenly decline and you don't have anyone to pick up the slack, that can cause a lot of problems. They have 8 wins so far, 2 draws, 6 losses, and they have 26 points altogether with a goal difference of +2. Now, look, negative-wise, the defence is a bit all over the place. The big chances that teams are creating against them are way too much, and they've been very leaky. For a defence that was last season almost impenetrable at one point, with Van Dijk and Konate, holding that back line with Alisson obviously in goal when they won the league last year. It's a bit worrying, to say the least, if you're a Liverpool fan, as they will all know. And I've listened to a lot of commentary from fans and from pundits about what they think's gone wrong. But I do really think that this disjointedness of the team is a big issue. Now, is that Arne Slot's fault? Well, that's an interesting one. I think obviously a lot of the blame has to be put on his doorstep, unfortunately for him. I think he's a really good manager. I think as much as the rest of the league was very poor last year, he still coached that team incredibly well. And when you move into the season, after the transfer window they had, you do expect more. But at the end of the day, if you're going to spend that much money, you've got to make it work. And he's unfortunately not. You spend over 500 million, you bring in theory, one of the best in class strikers in the league, one of the best in class creative midfielders in the league. In theory, that should be enough. You also then combine it with another amazing young striker in Ekitike. You also then combine that with right back in Frimpong and a left back in Kirkes. You'd think that they're on to a winner. You think they're no-brainers, but it does just show you how chopping and changing so much, especially with a team that's just won the league. It can show you how the chemistry can just have such a negative effect, or how that many changes can have such a negative effect on the overall team performance. And I do think that they're going to have a lot more downs before they finally hit the highs of what they could probably achieve. I do think they'll still make Champions League. I do think that Isak will come good eventually and Ekitike will come good eventually. I'm not too sure about Wirtz this season. I think Wirtz could be one for maybe the second season, once he's had a bit more time in the league and he's adapted to the physicality. Because I think at the moment, the biggest issue I see when I watch him is he's very passive. He's not really being able to assert himself on the game, and I think a lot of that is to do with the difference in physicality. Teams have shifted from a more technical sort of structure in their team and their squad to a much more physical approach, let's say. Now, they still have the technical ability. These players are great players across the league, but the league is so much closer in ability than it ever has been. I do believe that more physical change that's happened with a lot of teams, especially in the midfield, is going to cause Wirtz a lot of problems until he learns to adapt. So I do think maybe second season, you might see a bit more out of him. I just have a feeling this season might be a write-off for him. The right-back and left-back situation, though, that is an interesting one, because as much as I rated Frimpong before he came to Liverpool, and still do, it's almost like a square peg in a round hole situation. He's so good going forward, but he's basically a winger, and that's what he used to play at Leverkusen. He used to be basically a winger with how high he got, and the way they used to play with Trent. Trent obviously got forward, but he'd be more in what I would call the De Bruyne pocket, which is sort of in the middle of the in the space in between the halfway line and the edge of the opposing team's penalty area. He would hang around there, look for passes, and that's why him and Salah had such a great relationship, because he would just find Salah over and over and over again. So I do think that right back situation is going to be a problem. Kirkes, on the other hand, I think still, even though he looks really poor at the moment, I could see him improving a lot once he gets a bit more comfortable, gets a bit more organised. I think his problem is that the rest of the defence is currently all over the shop. If, let's say, they got a Mark Gay in January or in the summer, and Van Dijk's levels get back to what you'd expect from Van Dijk, I do believe that someone like Kirkes will flourish a bit more, having that structure there. I think you see that a lot with City's defence at the moment. We'll get to City in a minute, but I think you see that a lot at the moment with Diaz and Núñez in that right-sided spot. Because they've got consistency and there's more organisation across the whole team, those two are performing a lot better this season than they did last year, which was a big thing for Man City, but we'll get onto them in a mo. But yeah, for Liverpool, I can still see him making Champions League. Once they tighten it up, I do think they should play tighter. They shouldn't be as free-flowing, they shouldn't be as open, they should go back to maybe more solid basics, try and get a couple scrappy wins, and I think you'll see a massive improvement from them then, and you build confidence from there. But when that happens, I'm going to say it's probably more after January. Maybe if they get some signings in, if they can do, maybe we'll see a difference there. The Mo Salah situation, I'm not too sure. I didn't think he'd ever play again after his comments, but then he came on as a sub in the game just gone this weekend, in the 2-0 win. Now, the problem is he's on such big wages, so him trying to get shifted out of Liverpool, as much as they probably would love to get rid of him at this point, I imagine, to get the 400 grand or whatever he's on off the wage bill, is who you're going to get to sign him. Now, obviously, Saudi is an obvious option, but are they going to really invest into Mo Salah? Their transfer policy of all their teams seems to have shifted a lot over the past 12 to 18 months, where they're not really going for those big names, let's say, like they were, the big fish. Kind of got them in, and now they've been trying to hoover up maybe younger, more potential talent to raise the floor of the league, instead of trying to go for the big fish to raise the ceiling of the league. So it's a very interesting thing. I think, look, my prediction, I think he probably stays till the end of the season, but I may be completely wrong in a couple of weeks' time when the January window opens and he's gone to a Saudi team. So you never know. So anyway, that's my no chances. Who I think probably have no chance in the sense of making a run at the league title. I do think Liverpool will finish in the Champions League spots. United, on the other hand, they'll probably finish around that 7th, 6th spot. Their main hope is if maybe potentially getting that 5th spot, sneaking into that 5th spot, and then the Premier League getting awarded that extra space in the Champions League like it did last season. That is a potential for them. But yeah, we'll move on to the fun but flawed. So in the fun but flawed category, we're going to have Chelsea and we're going to have Aston Villa. So we'll start with Chelsea. Very interesting team. A lot of people will have scoffed at their transfer policy over the years and how that has translated into basically nothing, even though last season they did win a European Cup, even though it was the Conference League. Nothing to be scoffed at. It's still a trophy. And then they won the Club World Cup. Watching them this season, I've been really impressed with their structure and their ability to create chances out of nothing. They have some great individual players in the likes of Palmer and Esteban. Palmer has been out for most of the season as well, which is another thing to really think about, is that at the end of the day, he's a difference maker. He is someone who comes in and he will get you goals, he will get you assists, he will get you big numbers. But because of that as well, when he's on the pitch, even if he's not going to score or assist, he makes the other team have to change how they play to accommodate stopping him. He is such a magnet for pressure and for attention that frees up space for everybody else. So even if he's not maybe necessarily being the one to bag all the goals and assists, he's still a really important player in the sense of his gravity will bring people towards him, freeing up space elsewhere, and they've not had that so far this season. Now, Esteban is a player I absolutely love. I think he's awesome. And I think they have got an absolute gem there. I'm very jealous of the fact they've got Esteban. I think he's going to be an amazing player. But a young Brazilian lad coming from the Brazilian league into the Premier League, there's going to be inconsistencies. That's what happens when you have too many young players. You have so much inconsistency that I don't think they'll actually be able to put a run of results together to challenge the top teams. Now, I may be wrong. They may hit mid. They may go in. They may invest in January as well. I think a lot more teams might be more open to the idea of investing in January than they have been in the past. And I think Chelsea might be one of them. And if they do, and they maybe get some experience in, maybe my opinion might change. But I do think because of their lack of experience in the back and maybe up top, other than maybe a Cole Palmer, I do see them sort of being too inconsistent to not be able to get a run of games together and thus falling by the wayside when we get to the business end. But I do think they're a really fun team to watch. The other X factor they have is Caicedo, who has been amazing this year in that central defensive role, and he basically reminds me of a young Fernandinho in the way that he plays. He can basically marshal that defensive midfield role by himself, but also has a bit of a goal threat in the way that he's pressing. He's trying to get the ball high up on the pitch. He's not like waiting for it. He is, and that can sometimes be his detriment. His aggressiveness can sometimes be his detriment. But I do think it's really interesting to see his development, especially with the price tag that was attached to him, to see where he is now, and now has become a top 3 defensive midfielder in the league, maybe the world. And if you've got a player like him, if you've got a player like Cole Palmer in your side, you are obviously going to win a lot of games. I just worry about the rest of the team. I worry about the rest of the team with its temperament and its inexperience. And Caicedo as well with his temperament. Already has a couple sending off this year. As a whole, as a team, I just see them not having enough to keep a consistent run of games going where they rack up 6, 7, 8 wins in a row like the top teams can. My other fun but flawed team are Aston Villa. Now, they are at the moment the team with the best record currently on form in the league. 9 wins, 3 draws and 3 losses. Goal difference of +7. They've beaten a lot of the big teams. So they beat Arsenal recently. They beat Man City. And they are incredibly hard to beat. Unai Emery is an amazing manager. The way he can get the most out of these players, the way he sets up his teams, the way they all fight and play for him, the tactical changes he makes in games as well, the way he can change his shape to sort of counteract what the other team is doing. I've been really impressed. I think, like everybody, I've been really impressed with Villa this season. The reason I put them in here, though, is just, again, I do think in some respects this is a bit of a purple patch. And I do think that they won't have enough to get over the line. Now, I do caveat that. If Morgan Rogers becomes one of the best number 10s in the league, which he's on the way, don't get me wrong, he's incredible. If he can make that extra jump to basically putting his stamp on every single game no matter what, which he's on the trajectory to do, they have a chance at that point. Because the difference between a Aston Villa and the next 2 teams, City and Arsenal, which I'll talk about in a mo, is I just don't think they've got match winners on a night-to-night basis when they're playing, and that is the most important thing when it comes to being able to challenge for titles, especially. They're not far off, obviously, and we're in December. They've done amazing, but I do think because they don't have maybe that a game winner every single game, being the best player on the pitch, because they don't have that yet. And also because I don't think their defence is actually going to be able to hold up for the whole season at this high of a standard. I do think they'll fall off eventually. They've got a really good chance of making top 4. I do think they've maybe got even a bit more than Chelsea do, so I could see them maybe getting 3rd. You saw that last season, how the pressure probably got to them by the end of the season and they dropped out of the sort of running for the Champions League spots when they had, a really good shot at making it. So we'll see. Look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll challenge. Maybe they'll be a bit of a dark horse. Again, Unai Emery, I'd probably say, thinking off the top of my head, he's probably the second best manager in the league, in all seriousness. Yeah, no, he's the second best manager in the league, in my opinion, behind Pep Guardiola. So when you've got that level of manager, an elite manager like that in the dugout, you do have a chance. The manager is becoming so important to team success now, not necessarily just the individual players, but if your manager is able to actually coach a win, that is becoming so important, more important than it ever has been. I think that's why you've seen the likes of Guardiola be able to rattle off 6 titles in however many years, in 8 years, because he's such a high, he's like a level above everybody else coaching wise. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Villa will challenge. I mean, I'd be very surprised if they did, but I don't think I'd be mad about it. I think that'd be fun if they could challenge. Right, proper challengers: Man City and Arsenal. So we'll start with City. I think they're an interesting one because let's start with the record. They've got 10 wins, 1 draw, and 4 losses. They've got a goal difference of plus 19. As a team, okay, there's a lot of potential with this group of players. And again, I think what separates them from everybody else in the league is they have obviously Pep Guardiola. They have Erling Haaland. They have the best in class. You could even say maybe even the goalkeeper Donnarumma is best in class as well in the league. Obviously, that one's a bit more of a debate. People have different opinions on that, different maybe types of goalkeepers like. But if he's not the best, he's top 3 at least. But Erling Haaland, undoubtedly number 1 striker. Pep Guardiola, undoubtedly number 1 manager. So that sets them apart instantly. Then you've got the likes of a Foden, who is coming into form, and you've got Cherki. Now, Cherki, I think, could be a real difference maker. Watching his progression since the start of the season to now has been amazing to see. His confidence, number 1, he's never really lacked confidence, to be fair, ever since he stepped on the pitch. But his sort of arrogance to be able to step on the pitch in a way and do what he wants, he goes onto the pitch every time thinking, I am the best player. You can just tell. He's got that swagger, he's got that attitude. He's able to sort of dictate play. He can speed it up, he can slow it down. He is a difference maker. And I think if he keeps progressing the way he's progressing, he's already on 6 assists in 448 minutes played or something like that I saw today. That's mental. That is mental. That is incredible numbers. And he's got a goal as well, which he got in the first game of the season. He is a star in the making. So those 3 players, and then Jeremy Doku, who's had an incredible season as well. So attacking wise, brilliant. Okay, as long as they can keep him fit and keep him firing. Midfield wise, look, Nico Gonzalez has been incredible. His progression has been incredible. I don't necessarily worry about him. I worry about the player who sits next to him. So I love Bernardo Silva, legend of the Premier League. You know, winner mentality, captain. But I do wonder, does he have maybe the legs to be able to go week in and week out? Probably not. So then who do you partner with Gonzalez then? Rodri, obviously. If he came back into the fold, fully fit, that solves the issue straight away. But is he ever going to be fit again? I don't know. He's going to struggle probably this season by the looks of it so far. So you've got Reinders. Now, Reinders, I think, is a better further forward. And I think that's the issue he's had, is when he's played next to Gonzalez, expecting almost to hold Gonzalez's hand and cover that middle with a solid base. When he ventures too far forward, that leaves Nico Gonzalez on an island, and that's when problems happened. And I think you saw that at the start of the season. Now, that's where I think there could be some issues, because even though they've sorted this out a little bit, that midfield into the defence is what basically gives you that solid base to work from to be able to push all those players forward. Especially when you've got the likes of Nico O'Reilly going up on the left, and Nunez, who is up and down on the right side. You need a solid midfield and a solid centre-back partnership to be able to stop the chances, and I do think they concede too many good quality chances at the moment. But there is a thought that if you can outscore everybody, does it really matter? For me, yes, I think that defence needs to tighten up a bit. It has looked better the past few games. Will it be able to hold out for the season? I actually think it will. I think that we're now seeing a sort of increase in the level of performances every week. And I don't think we're anywhere near seeing the peak of Man City yet. So come the end of the season, I do think that City will be challenging for definite. And I do think you'll see performance levels rise as we head up through the season. And there's also, you never know, they might go invest in January. There's rumours about Mark Gay. There's rumours about Elliot Anderson. There's rumours about Semenyo. So they're looking at sort of recruiting and reinforcing. If they get any of those players, I think that increases their ceiling massively and raises their floor as well. So at the end of the day, it's not about the start of the season. It's about being in touch and distance of the title of the top spot, and then turning it on in the second half of the season when City normally do turn up to dance a little bit more. It normally takes him the first half of the season to kind of get things right. Pep Guardiola messes around with things, he changes things, he moves players around, and then when he finds what he likes and what's delivering results, he sticks with it. Even last season when things were terrible, once he found a system that worked and a team that was going to win games, he stuck with it, and they made Champions League football, and they finished third, only a couple of points behind Arsenal. A lot of people forget they nearly overtook Arsenal. If Arsenal slipped up at any point during the end of the run-in, City would have taken them over. So it's actually really interesting to think when you actually put it into perspective. They were so bad last season, and yet they still finished third and only a couple of points off second. So I think they're much better than last season. They're winning games that they would never have won last season. And when people were writing them off, saying they're done, I think a lot of people by the end of the season are going to be eating some humble pie, let's say, on where they predicted City to finish, because I do think they're definitely challenging for the title. Will they win it or not? I think they will, but again, there's a long way of the season to go, and a lot of things can happen. If any injuries happen to Nico Gonzalez, I think they're pretty much done for. I think at that point, City are gonna really struggle to be able to find someone to be able to plug that middle unless they sign someone in January. So there are some question marks still on that, but we'll see. I think their performance levels are going to keep increasing now. I think that's where they're heading. They're heading up. They ain't plateauing, and they're not decreasing in performance. I think every performance is increasing every time. But talking about plateauing, now we're moving on to Arsenal. Now, amazing team, incredible squad. I love some of their players. Saka's brilliant. Eze is amazing. For what it's worth, I think Rice has been the best midfielder in the league this season, potentially the best player. Zubimendi it was a really smart signing. The fact that they got that done early and basically beat everybody to the punch was a great bit of business, because he is a difference maker in that centre mid. Odegaard, don't mind him. Do think he's a bit passive sometimes. Do think his problem is that he doesn't take the game by the scruff of the neck. And I think their other biggest issue is the fact they don't really have a recognised striker. They obviously signed Gyökeres, but I think it's been really telling to see his performances, how he's not adapted to this league at all. He's really struggled to get going. He's not been able to impose himself in the game. Yeah, his hold-up play's been okay, but I think for the money they spent on him and the reputation he had coming into the league, good hold-up play isn't enough. You know, you need to be scoring, and not against just any old run-of-the-mill teams. You've got to be scoring in big games. And I think when Havertz gets back to full fitness, Gyökeres will be on the bench most of the time. And especially in the big games, I think he's more likely to play Marino up front, which is mental to think, or Havertz up front. And I think that's their biggest issue, because they're going to struggle. The goals will dry up, and they already have started doing, with the corners now, with the corners and the set piece goals diminishing for them. You're already seeing them really struggle to score from open play in some games, and they're already playing sort of emotionally charged matches and struggling and looking shaky and looking nervous, and that's always been the biggest problem. I think for them, they have the best defence in the league. They have the best squad. Attack-wise, they've got a lot of improvement. I think their weakness is the manager, unfortunately. Now, I think Arteta's a really, really smart football person, but I do wonder, does he have the mental fortitude to be able to stick out a full Premier League title race? Because we've seen it plenty of times before, how as the season has progressed, his sort of ability to control the emotion of his team, let's say, I think has always been a massive weakness. As a manager in tense situations, your players look to you to be the sort of standard bearer in the sense of how they should be acting and how they should be being mentally, in the sense of their attitude and how they are reacting in game. If you have setbacks, players look to the manager for guidance on how to get out of those situations. And I think Arteta really struggles in them moments. I do think he's got huge potential as a manager. He's still quite a young manager at the end of the day, and he is at one of the biggest clubs in England. Like, he's not a mug. He's a really smart football person, and he has a great footballing brain. And even when people were clowning him from that documentary of on Amazon Prime a couple of years ago, I think I was watching it and thinking, there's something there. Obviously, he's trying to think outside the box. You have to do that as a manager, because every day the same messages over and over again are just going to get boring. And I think he does, from what we can tell from that sort of documentary, that docuseries, is he at least tries to think outside the box constantly and tries to think of different ways of doing things. And I can only sort of commend the bravery of trying that. But I do wonder, is Arsenal's downfall his inability to be able to control the players' emotions in the tense parts of the season? And I think that's something really that is definitely the one to watch with them. I think they're obviously going to challenge. I don't think they're going to capitulate like they have done over the years. I think they've got a much better squad, so that won't happen. So even if they get injuries, they'll be able to deal with it. But as for being able to sort of stick out the full season and be able to sort of win enough games and not draw so many games, that's their problem. It's not necessarily the wins and the losses, it's the drawing from them. They draw too many games, especially in the tight moments. It's what's been their downfall over the past few years when they finished second, is the fact they draw too many games. If they can turn some of those draws into wins, again, 100% the favourites. But I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening yet. Now, that may change. Gyökeres might get into a run of form. He's an amazing striker. He's obviously got ability. But is he going to be Arsenal's saviour? I don't know. Because at the moment, their attack lives and dies off if Saka can create something. And that's not really good. Or Trossard coming on and scoring a worldie, because that's all he ever seems to do. He's just seen, every time I watch Leandro Trossard, he comes on and he scores an absolutely mega goal. And I don't know why. It's all every time, I swear. So that's my tier list of people who are challenging for the Premier League. Let me know in the comments if you disagree or agree. Tell me if maybe I've missed some points, maybe I've overlooked certain things, maybe I've not considered someone who might be a dark horse, might do a Leicester. You never know, Crystal Palace may be in there, may get a dark horse. But for me, I do think that Arsenal, Man City are the main challengers. And if I'm going to predict anyone to win now, I'm going to back the Man City boys. I'm going to back my boys to basically pull it through. And I think their performances are heading one way, whereas I think Arsenal's are sort of plateauing. And that's never a good sign this early on in the season. You want to be hitting your peak performances at the tail end of the season, not at the beginning. Because at the beginning, Arsenal are like the best team, one of the best teams that has ever graced the Premier League. But that's only the first couple months of the season. That's not when the titles are won and lost. It has to be a continuous thing over the year. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll revisit this in a few months after a few games and, look at the league table. City might have dropped off a cliff, might have had some injuries. Aston Villa may have continued their form and proved me wrong, and Morgan Rogers might be the best player in the league. Maybe, but that's why we love football. Things can change all the time. So, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you could drop a like. If you like what I spoke about or you're interested in hearing some more content from me, please subscribe. I'm going to be talking about all things sport, not just football. So any sort of headlines that grab my attention from the basketball world, from the F1, darts, rugby, cricket, Olympic, whatever it might be, I want to be across all sports and try and make sure I'm giving you some interesting topics, thought-provoking videos, and good discussions. So if you do like the sound of that and you want to hear more, please subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Right, peace.